From the top rope, this is the Squared Circus.
Square! Ah! That's the occult phenomenon.
You know what I think?
Recording in progress.
I realize I like paint.
That was a botch. Hold on.
So, anyway, that's how it's gonna go.
So a lot of people think AEW was better before, and they blame Tony Khan, and he gets a lot of shit. But I think anybody in Tony Khan's situation would have had the same result.
If you
Now,
were okay,
basically, Tony Khan is a fan
yes,
who started this wrestling company as a sort of like fantasy project, right? And he's a fan just like you or me or any of the other nerds who are listening to this podcast or making their own podcasts or watching every week, who can reference every stupid wrestler from 20 years ago. If any of us had the same resources of Tony Khan, we would have done the same thing and probably have had the same result.
here's one thing I'm going to disagree on that though.
Oh,
And the reason why, not that us two assholes would do better. No, I don't think we would do better. But the reason why I feel that it was better when it first started is you had Cody, you had the Elite, and you had the Cody and the Elite helping him out with a lot of they had bigger roles. Then along the way, he pretty much took over and did everything, where everything just went by him. They were actually helping put the matches on. They were helping with the talent. They were helping. So they had more control of helping out everything. When he took full control of everything, and then when he took full control, he bought Ring of Honor. That's when everything, to me, went to shit, because he took too much onto himself. When now he doesn't have the Elite with their freedom to help out with this and that. He doesn't have Cody Rhodes helping out. I think Cody Rhodes had a lot to do with the beginning wise. So it's not the same. I do feel like that's why they are going down a little bit now, is because of that reason. He's the one who took saying, no, I got this all now. Everything goes through me. It wasn't like that in the beginning. It wasn't.
right. And I agree with that. But we don't know all the reasons why he did that. Right. So let's role play a little bit here. You or me, you and me. One day we get a bunch of money, and what do we want to do with it? We've got billions of dollars, and it's 5 years ago when all we've got is WWE, and it's just kind of not doing it for us. Maybe we start our own wrestling company. I think you or me or any other fan in 2019 when this started, if we had billions of dollars, the connections he had to like major media companies and access to the top wrestling indie talent, we all probably would have done the same thing. Shit, we could start our own wrestling company. We could do it the way that we think it should be done, the way it's not being done. We can fix all the problems that we think exist right now with the only major mainstream wrestling company on the planet, WWE. We could do it the way we think it needs to be done. And for almost any fan, I think it would have been cool. You came at it from a fan perspective. There were flaws in AEW from the beginning. This is the sound of ice as I make another drink. There were flaws in AEW in the beginnings, but we looked past a lot of them because it was still growing and there was an excitement to be there growing with it. There was the expectation of a better future, right? We knew it was growing. We knew there were some growing pains that they had to work out, but it was also fun because it was coming from a fan perspective. They were doing the stuff that we would have done similarly, maybe not exactly the same. Maybe we might have pushed one person different or done one or two things differently, but there was something about coming out of WWE that was very micromanaged from top down, to going to AEW that's like coming from the opposite direction, the fan perspective. Basically, it was like if somebody in the front row was booking the show, and that was fun to us because we felt like we were there, you know, in the front row, standing next to the person booking it, basically. But then, hold on, let me finish. Okay. So you could ride that out for a couple of years. The fan perspective, it's a new thing from WWE, the growing pains, all that stuff. But at some point, it becomes a business. At some point, the pressure is on. You've got networks you need to make happy. You've got advertisers you need to make happy. You've got all these different backstage personalities you need to make happy. You have to manage all this stuff, right? So you run into new problems that you didn't anticipate. How do you handle them? I don't think any of us would have handled it great. You've got to make decisions you might not want to make. You make decisions that you might regret. Tony Khan is pretty opaque, so you don't know what's going on behind the scenes as much because he's not really disclosing much. But these are all decisions we would all have had to make. It all would have been in the same situation as far as like pressure and like making wrong moves and having to fix errors that you made because you don't have time. The next show is in a couple of days, and then the next show is in a couple of days after that. You have to do it now. You have to decide what you're going to do. Ratings were low. Got to do something, or the network's going to be pissed. All these different things. And in terms of like relying on Cody and the Bucks and all those other people that they started the promotion with, there's a certain point at which any boss, and I've been a boss, I've been a worker, I've been on every level of a company, and I've worked with 1 million bosses, maybe a slight exaggeration, 40 bosses, and every boss is going to handle it differently. But there's a certain point at which is like, if you want something done right, or if something has to get done and somebody's going to have to take the blame, I'll be the person to take the blame. If somebody's going to have to be the person that has to bear the responsibility of this decision, I'll be the one. I'm the boss. That's my job. So I think there's some of that with Cody taking more of the responsibility on from Cody and the Young Bucks. But there's also probably an aspect of like, I'm already in this. I have this experience dealing with networks, dealing with, you know, major media companies, and you guys don't let me deal with it because I know what has to be done to make these people happy, whether he's right or not.
See, with me, I still kind of disagreed a little bit in the beginning when they first happened because I've been in retail most of my life, as you know, and now everyone else does, where they know that yes, the boss Khan was almost like RZA and Wu-Tang. He was the money maker. He was and the vision, but then RZA needed the Wu-Tang Clan to actually pick up. He couldn't do it solo.
Wu-Tang Clan goes the trolley.
But they can't do what's it called? They can't do it solo. Right. RZA himself solo wise, unless you're talking about Gravediggers, which was great too, but that was a click too. His solo albums sucked. But when you talk about Khan, when Khan first came in, he did, because you had let the people grow with you. He was only the money. He was only the person who was handing out the money. He was a fan that says, "Hey, I will sponsor you. I will put down the money for you." The people of like the Elite and Cody and all them, they were the ones who's had the real vision saying, hey, this is how we should do it with Khan. And so that's why, to me, it blossomed. But then when he took that away, now you're still stuck with someone who just has a lot of money, but has no experience now. Just because you're a businessman doesn't mean that you know how to run this. And I agree. So that's why he needs the people. I did hear that he did hire people now to be either locker room leaders. He hired people of some writers and this and that to help. He hired writers.
I know he promoted a bunch of people to like talent relations positions and like coach positions and things like that.
If he didn't, he needs to. He needs help. And we said this multiple times. So he can't do it himself. So therefore. And this is what we saw the downfall of WWE when Vince was in charge. he was so old, like fashioned, and he's just so strict to his ways. He didn't let everyone give any
Yeah.
free will or let them, have some kind of control. And that's exactly what we're seeing now with Khan because he did this. So I do think that it was better because he lost that. He just became a business person instead of an actual fan.
I wouldn't say it's exactly like Vince. I think people had a lot of creative freedom.
They do have more creative. I didn't mean it like that harshly.
Yeah.
But my whole thing is that the reason why I feel like it went down is because he took more control of everything and everything goes through him instead of actually going for the fans. He lost that along the way too. I felt like he lost the fans almost a little bit.
Yeah, I mean a lot of it too is he kind of was set up to fail. And I'm not before we get too much further, I'm not an apologist for Tony Khan, right? I mean, he's making mistakes, but 4 years ago, there was no AEW. This dude and some other indie guys just made up a new promotion out of whole cloth. There didn't have to be anything else. There might not have ever been another thing if these guys didn't do it. So if it's perfect or not, it's what we've got. Went off track there a little bit, but my point was I'm not trying to be an apologist for Tony Khan. I think he's making mistakes. I think, yes, he got himself too involved, but at the same time, business changes. I still think like the first few years is a honeymoon period. And a lot of the critiques now, like it's really hard to put in perspective because we're in such a different time now. We can't look at AEW in 2022 with 2020 eyes, right? Because they were still making mistakes. There were still a lot of things that weren't, if they happened today, we wouldn't be as forgiving about it because it was still new, because we still looked at it as like, well, it's a new thing. They're still figuring it out, so it's not necessarily fair to look at it from the same perspective, but like things happen so fast. You have to like make decisions. My last job, my boss would make decisions that I didn't always agree with. Right. And then I had his job when he quit and I moved up and I got it a little bit because part of being a boss is like making the decision and moving on. You don't have time to deliberate. I'm somebody who deliberates. I would draw things out because I need to look at every detail before I make a decision. But eventually I learned I had to make some decisions and I regret some of the decisions I made. And I've since left that job, but being the person who was making the decisions, the people I left behind are dealing with the decisions I made still because I had to make them quickly with limited resources and limited time. And I had to move on to the next thing. I wish I would have made a different decision maybe, or had more time to weigh my options, but I didn't have that luxury. So I think, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's, why did Cody leave in the first place, right? He saw what was changing. He saw a better opportunity somewhere else. He saw AEW becoming something different than what he started. And he saw that he didn't have the same opportunities he had when he started it.
Well, here's another way of putting it, like me working in retail. You have the CEO, but then you have the DMs, then you have the managers, then you have the shift supervisors, then you have these people, and then you have the workers. So it goes. It was a chain of command, right?
Yeah. It's a good song by XTC, Chain of Command. Look it up.
So therefore, you have multiple layers. What happened to me, I feel like, is that he had some multiple layers, but then he went to strictly one. Now he's finally branching off, but he just went to one layer. And that's why it gets too much for him. You know what I'm saying?
So I agree.
So
but-
that's why he needs the multiple layers. Otherwise, he's going to keep on failing.
I agree, but to some degree, like I understand taking it on himself, and I'm not saying that he's doing it for noble reasons. I don't know why, but putting myself in that situation, like there's definitely times where I'm like, I had sort of an assistant, and I could say like, "Hey, you deal with this." But I'm like, I know it's not really fair for me to put this on him, and I don't know if he's going to deal with it, in the most efficacious way. I'm just going to deal with it myself, and especially when you're dealing with personalities, right? And at a certain point, the honeymoon period's over for everybody, not just Tony Khan, not just the fans, but all the people backstage, the people who are waiting for their turn, and then it keeps not coming, or whatever the gripe is, that you might not have when things are still new. After a few years, it's like, well, things are not new anymore. This is just a company, and it's just a job I work for. Why am I putting up with this thing that makes me unhappy? So like if there's a dispute at work at my old job where I was the boss, like I felt like obligated to be the person who kind of shoulders that burden, because that's a lot to put on somebody, right?
And I agree with that, but at the same time, though, is what I'm saying is that if you don't have these multiple layers, you burn yourself out. So now
I agree with that.
Now, so now if you don't have these multiple layers and multiple commands, so if you let me just say something. If you have one person,
I got burnt out and quit that job. So you're right.
So if you have one person that just does, let's say, talent, one person that just does this, one person that does that, since he took everything, he might not actually be making the best choices in his head, because now he's so burnt out. He's actually doing it where his answers are probably not the same answers he would have had 2 years ago, because he's so burnt out. So that's why you need these people. He can't take it. So even though you say like, oh, well, I would rather take all this stuff on myself, but if, like you said, you did it, you got burnt out, you quit that job. So for him to sit there and maybe make the right decisions for the bigger picture, he needs help. So he's not just, so now these little things that could be handled by other people, all of a sudden now he's doing everything. He's getting spread out thin. Now he just looks like he's coke and he's insane. You know what I'm saying? Like he really does. He always looks like he's on coke. He always looks like he has like this deer in the headlights look. Like he never had that. He's always so worried now. Like he talks, even the jabs that he takes, and he's trying to talk shit and this and that, whatever. But like he looks like he's like a deer in the headlights, and he's like, "Oh my god, what's gonna happen now?"
Yeah.
And I always have this picture like where like this guy is saying, "Oh, everything's fine, and someone's like, "Hey, turn around," while the whole world's burning. No, everything's fine.
Right. That meme with the dog sitting at the table or whatever.
Yeah. So that's what I feel like Khan is, and so that's why I feel like it did change, is because I don't agree with taking all the things. I don't agree with him doing all the decisions, because he's definitely burnt out. He's definitely burnt out. Ring of Honor really destroyed him.
That was too much. And I agree. Like if he was smart, he would have hired more people to do more of the backstage stuff, particularly the booking and all that. I mean, he does rely on a lot of other people to not necessarily book, but to like, construct their own storylines and stuff. I think like Moxley and Jericho in particular.
Now he does, I think.
So he can ride that, but he's still the end. The buck stops with him as far as these things go. But I mean, it's difficult. I talked about this briefly in another episode. Like anytime you're in an industry where the jobs have a creative aspect to it, you get more emotionally invested, right? So like I get Tony Khan had this vision, whether it's a vision that you agree with or not. In his mind, this is what he wanted. So to bring that vision to fruition, it's harder. The more people you bring in, the harder it is to realize that vision, right? So, I mean, he started this company because he's a fan, not because he's a businessman trying to make money, which is a very different approach from traditional wrestling. Although I guess Billy Corgan probably fits that same description.
Yeah.
But we're not going to talk about Billy Corgan.
I don't even know what his fucking federation is. What the hell are they called?
He's got NWA now.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Sorry. Go ahead.
He was in Impact for a bit, or he was partial. I don't know how he's involved. Anyway, it's a whole that's a whole thing. But yeah, so you get emotionally invested, and I mean, I had a job a few years ago in the marketing department, and it was just so much different than every other department because we had a creative aspect to our jobs, even if it was just boring ass shit like insurance, which was our company. But like when you make a design, when you write copy for something, it still has this creative element to it. So it's harder to get feedback on it to say like, you know what, I didn't really like the way this came out. Can you make that image smaller and get rid of some of the blue? Like, and in your mind, like, no, the blue is what ties it all together or something like that. I wasn't a designer, but so I'm just making shit up. But like, but that's the kind of approach, right? And if you're Tony Khan, you're the boss and you have a creative vision, the more people you bring in, the more that vision is getting distorted, right? And from playing in bands, you can really see it that way. I've like, when I was young, like, yeah, let's start a band. We'll have all our friends. You'll have 1 million people in the band. Let's do it. But then at a certain point, like I remember band I was in like 10 years ago or something, we started with just me and a friend and we're like, let's try just to do the two of us. Can we just do a 2-person band? Like we don't want to have more people in, like, it's, you know, the more people we get, the more personalities we have to make happy. And the more diluted our ideas will be. And eventually we did get more people and it was fine, but we'd already established what we were doing.
What band name was this?
Oh boy. I'm not here to plug my bands.
No,
nobody's going to want to hear my shitty power violence bands anyway.
I'm just curious if it's one of the shitty bands I promoted. It's
a shitty band that you've made fun of many, many times.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I thought of. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So I understand that from a creative perspective, right?
But you can't. But then with that aspect, then he's still the same guy that hired every fucking asshole then that was available.
I mean, yes, but I think he's a different asshole.
I'm not calling him an asshole. I call he got every single person that was a free agent. So if you're saying that all these people will get more diluted and this and that, whatever, he just hired on everyone.
That's true. That's a good point.
So it's at the same time, he still shot himself in the foot. Then he just fucking
grabbed
everyone. And
yeah,
he just needs like the heart of wrestling back into him. I think that's what it is. He lost some kind of special feeling in him, and he just needs to go to certain people or maybe get some guidance, you know, like to bring back that child in him. I know that sounds cheesy.
No,
he needs to bring it back. He needs to bring it back to what the heart and soul was of like someone like Eddie Kingston.
Oh boy.
so I think
they need to change the name of the promotion to EKW, Eddie Kingston Wrestling.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Nobody knows what the joke even is at this point. They didn't listen to the other episodes.
No, they listened to about 50 seconds of it.
But I think he's, you know, I mean, he's kind of the band who's like, I think periodically putting out that album says we're going back to our roots, which usually doesn't work. But like what he's doing with the Acclaimed and that whole thing now, I think is a little bit of like, oh, I'm going back to like trying to be fan friendly. I think he still can kind of look in the mirror and see like, maybe this wasn't a good idea. I mean, obviously the whole CM Punk thing, I think there's a little bit of buyer's remorse on that right now. So I don't think he's completely unaware or unable to adapt or change or, you know, take the fan perspective. But I do think it changes you, you know, over time. He started off as a fan who wanted to do a cool thing and who wanted to create a wrestling federation that was what he wanted to see. Like the same thing with being in a band. I want to be in the band that I want to go see. But then you have 3 other people in the band who want to see a different band. And you can't be the band you want to see, right? You start a band because you want to be in, I'm going to make up some band names now out of, you know, What random bands? Like, oh,
Venkman.
dude, you know what? Okay. I was gonna do bands people have heard of. But you start a band, and I'm trying to think of bands that people. I want to be Rush, and then like
Mad Disease 182.
Oh my god! And then you're like, oh, let me go find somebody else who wants to be in a band. Do you want to be in a band like Rush? Like, I want to be in a band like Rush. I'm more into like, yes, okay, but that's cool. We can make something happen. And then get another guy like, oh, I want to be in a band like Rush, and he wants to be in a band like, yes. Do you want to be in a band like? Well, I'd rather be in a band like Kansas. How's that? Oh, that's good enough. And then by the end, like you all have different. You start off, and every band I've ever been in, you start off with like, it's fine. We all have a slightly different vision, but it's cool. The end result will be a cool composite of all our different visions. And then 3 or 4 years later, you never quite realized your original vision. It might have been a cool band for a couple of years, but now you're like, we never got to be Rush like I wanted to be. I really want to be Rush. And like, Jimmy, the drummer, wants to be Foreigner, and I really don't want to be Foreigner.
All
I don't know why I'm picking these bands. These are not bands I really even listen to.
I all jokes aside, though, I really do. I bring it back to the same where I do feel like Cody and Elite and Khan had the same visions in the beginning, but then egos and everything kind of got in the way.
That shit changes, though, dude. Like you might all think you have the same vision in the beginning, but a few years down the line, your visions diverge. Or you start off from a place where like you're sacrificing. You have a vision that's 100%, but in order to create this vision with the other people that you need in order to create it, I can have 75% of my vision, and everybody has like 75% of their vision, and they're all happy with it because they're closing their eyes and thinking of England so they can do what's good for the overall product. And then 3 years down the line, they're like, you know what? I never got to do that thing I really wanted to do. It's starting to kind of bug me a little bit, and I wish I could do it.
Broke up?
Okay. I'm not even proud of that band.
I know you're not. I'm sorry. For the record, I don't know if you're going to even put this on. I'm naming every single band that he was in.
Not every single band. You've named about 3. I've been in like 10.
I know that is true. I didn't get to fucking.
No, that's okay. We don't need to.
All right. Anyway, go ahead. Continue.
You derailed it. So let's try to circle back. I think we can start trying to tie everything together and head to the finish line here.
We will definitely head to the finish. We won't talk about who's laughing now.
Oh God, I forgot about that band. At least nobody can find that band. You can look up Who's Laughing Now all you want.
If anyone wants to email me, email us. Jesus. I will make sure I will send any of these band names.
You don't have all of it.
I have a lot of it. I have a lot of it.
Motherfucker.
Anyway.
So anyway,
go for it.
This is really long. Shit.
That's fine because we had to talk about your bands.
Okay.
So go. Okay, you can end it now.
So I want everybody to go home. Go home. You're probably already home. I don't know. Maybe you're listening to this at work. Listen to more Power Violence.
That's all it is to it. Who's laughing now?
That's not a Power Violence band. We can't even go back to wrestling anymore.
Dude, I don't know how
why don't you just plug some other bands, some friends bands? Or do you have some rapper friends?
That's not nearly as fun. But to be honest, back to the topic of what we were talking about with Khan.
Back to the topic.
Back to the topic that Khan can't do it himself. It's kind of like this podcast. You know how boring it would be if you did it alone or if I did it alone? Like we need to talk to each other. So it's the same thing with Khan. He needs people. You can't do this shit solo.
Except at least Khan has like a product that's like good half the time. We can't even do this together. We just put out a piece of crap podcast, the two of us, over and over and over.
In the beginning, we were like, okay, we just kind of bullshitted, and we're like, you know what? Let's make a podcast and say the shit that we say on a daily basis, because it was either that or me making fun of these bastards.
You got it in.
I had to get it in.
You got it in. That was a long walk,
It was a long walk, but I got it through.
but you got to the finish line.
I love this.
But it's still that. It's still just two people getting drunk and talking shit. This is going to be a 40-minute episode of us just talking shit, and we're going to post it. I'm posting all this, by the way, dude.
Okay, because I list about 5 or 6 of your bands.
You
And if
did.
I had to fucking support and I have all your for the record of everyone listening, I don't like his music, but I have all his shit on my wall. so if people think I'm an asshole, I don't care.
It's true. You always supported my bands, even though you don't like them. You liked Bugsy.
I did like Bugsy, and that was the only one you hated.
I just got out of it
So
really quick.
I didn't even get into your rap songs.
Yeah. Fucking Christ.
This is nothing to do with wrestling anymore. It's become Bruno's.
No, this is me
Music.
wrestling with the garbage that you're throwing at me.
So
There's some wrestling going on here, but it's mental wrestling.
for the record, we're like 3,000 miles apart. If we were together, he would probably drop kick me by now.
I'm too old. Maybe 20 years ago.
Oh my god, this is so funny because your face on every single time you stopped.
Yeah. Nobody can see it.
No one can see it, but you know what though?
Face for radio.
Just let it rock. Just let it rock.
Let it rock? Who are you?
I have no idea anymore.
Let
But,
it rock?
So go
Is this a
ahead.
Scorpion song?
You can, you can say your final piece now of the whole podcast now of what you wanted to say about Khan.
All I'm saying is, whatever you think about AEW and Tony Khan, there is a lot of factors going into running a fucking mainstream wrestling program with two network TV shows. And yes, he brought a lot of these problems on himself, but at the same time, dude, you couldn't do it. You think you could do
No,
it?
I know.
Not you. I'm talking to the listeners.
No, I'm just saying I know I can't do it either.
You know,
And it's the same thing where, like I said, we all feel like we have the answers and things like that, and we obviously clearly do not.
Yeah. And Tony Khan's
And-
got his problems, and I think he can be egomaniacal and all the things you said. But
Yeah, and but it's the same thing. Like all jokes aside, I make fun of your music, but at the same time, you toured Japan, you did things with your music anyway that I did not. So obviously, people like we don't have the answers. But I do feel that one thing I would like to say
oh boy,
is,
you try to play a song, it didn't work.
oh,
Is something playing? I can't hear it.
you can't hear it?
No.
Wait, hold on.
Wow. Nothing. There's nothing. This doesn't work on Zoom.
Oh, that sucks. I was trying to play the other day by Bugsy.
That was our
But-
best song.
It was, yeah, but
But I unintentionally ripped off Sonic Reducer by the Dead Boys. That happens
Did
in
you?
music sometimes. You just don't realize it. You have a riff in your head and like, oh wait, that's something I heard before, and you just don't realize it. And you haven't listened to the record in like 10 years, and then you put it on like, oh, that's where I got that riff from.
the major thing though about this podcast is that we really are truly idiots, and that this is how we talk on a daily basis.
But you know what? We're idiots who can admit it.
Yes,
We're not
yes,
idiots who are doubling down on trying to pretend we're not idiots.
Yes, and we also we know that we don't know the answers. We know that we wouldn't be able to do any better than what Khan is doing. So
I know. I would
So-
love to be able to have the opportunity to try to and fail in that situation.
yeah, we have discussions, but about what we feel like could be better. But in the long run, we don't have the millions that he has. And
Dude,
we're
you know,
not
I
in
mean,
charge.
it would be a fucking dream. Even if I could have done what Tony Khan did and fail, if I had the resources to start a new mainstream wrestling program, and then in 5 years just burn out and totally quit and leave it to the next person, and probably have totally lost my mind in the process and had all kinds of gray hair and stress problems. Like,
Yeah.
it would have been cool to just even leave that behind. You know what I mean? Just to do it and fail would have been awesome.
Now that I'm just curious of what, if anyone actually made it this far of the fucking podcast, is what they would do to change things if they were in Khan's position. And
Yeah.
if they want any Bugsy song, go to the squaredcircus22@gmail.com.
I still
that
love
note-
you,
I still love you too, my man.
despite all of it.
Paid the cost to be the boss.